Most people who have a software idea never act on it because they assume they need to be a developer. What if that assumption is dead wrong? Today's guest is a practicing barrister with zero coding experience who built and launched an AI-powered legal platform. This episode is how he did it and what anyone with an idea needs to hear. So welcome back to CTRL-ALT-DEV, episode 29. I'm Sean Sale.
Yeah, and I'm Paul Rhodes.
This is a podcast where we press control on the hype, alt on the narrative, and dev on what's really happening in tech, AI, and the business of actually shipping software.
Yeah, and if you're new here, we run 4 different formats to the show. We do the deep dive, where it's just the two of us, one topic, properly unpacked, sometimes tightly structured around a listener question and a news roundup, sometimes a looser fireside chat. Either way, it's Paul and Sean on the topic of the day. Today, we've got the guest interview, so we bring somebody in who's doing actual work in the field with lived experience, not just talking about it, and give them the platform to tell their story. We ask the questions the polished case studies never cover. Then we do our show and tells, like the meal planner, where we open the laptop and we walk you through exactly how we use a specific tool in our businesses. So real workflows, real results, and our internal blueprints, and giveaway, and the panel review. It's their newest format where we get several guests around the table to pull apart a big topic in software and AI from every angle.
We also drop 2 bonus formats now and then, the milestone episode where we put down the day-to-day and ask where all this is actually heading, the bigger picture, the ethics, the stuff beyond the next quarter, and Press Control, a solo episode for which one of us has something that just needs saying. These come when they're needed, not on a schedule.
Yeah, and there's no ads on this show ever. So if today's episode earns it, share it with one person who gets something from it. So that's the only ask that we ever have.
Absolutely, and we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the CTRL-ALT-DEV YouTube channel. So send your listener questions to podcast@ggapps.co.uk or drop them in the YouTube comments below. Links in the show notes as well.
So today we're joined by Matthew Turner. Matthew is a practicing human rights barrister and a founder and CEO of NovaWIL, a modern AI-guided will writing platform that lets anyone create a legally sound will with lawyer-drafted clauses in minutes from their phone without a solicitor. The company is named after his 2-year-old daughter, Nova.
And before founding NovaWIL, Matthew qualified as a commercial solicitor at Magic Circle, a firm in London, before transferring to the bar. And for the last 5 years, he's been at Dougherty Street Chambers, the country's leading human rights set, specialising in wrongful death and inquests, and is ranked as a leading barrister in the legal directories. NovaWIL launched earlier this year and has already sold its first wills with zero marketing spend and is about to raise its first round of funding. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you both. Great to be here.
Brilliant to have you in. So before we dive in, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about your background as a barrister, what sort of cases you've handled throughout your career. And Sean mentioned like wrongful death cases without naming any names. Can you give a specific example? Because, yeah, it'd just be interested to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm a practicing barrister. And before that, I was a commercial solicitor. So it's been a bit of a journey through law. But for the last 5 years or so, I've been specialist in human rights cases, particularly where people have been injured. So I've done lots of my cases were people being assaulted by the police or people getting seriously injured in prison. But the real core of my practice is wrongful deaths. And day in, day out, I was representing families who whose loved ones died in either prison or in mental health hospitals or police custody, lots of children who died in the context of social care failings. And I would represent the families in the inquest into the death and then any litigation that followed afterwards. My main sort of objective was to get answers for the families as to what happened to their loved one, especially where, if it's a death in prison, they weren't there and they don't really know what happened, and they really need those answers to move on. Accountability in terms of where things have gone wrong and where deaths were avoidable, exposing that and holding the people or the institutions to account, and then trying to affect change, because with each of these deaths, the idea is that learning comes out of them so that it doesn't happen again to someone else. So it's heavy stuff, but
wow, that's heavy stuff. Then for your mental sanity, that's going to be quite a tough one.
Yeah, which to be brutally honest is part of the reason I'm embarking on this new venture.
Yeah. And have you always been interested in tech and software, Matt, or did that come later?
Yeah, yes and no. No, in that I've in court, for example, I always preferred hard copy papers, unlike a lot of my colleagues. So I would turn up to court and in front of juries, I'd have lots of big bundles in hard copy, and I navigate through them with, my pen and my fingers and tabs. And that was relatively unusual for someone of my age. And even at law school, when I was in the US, I spent a year in the US in law school, and I have a distinct memory of doing an exam where there's probably 50 people in the classroom doing the constitutional law exam, and all of them were on their laptops doing the exam because you're allowed to, apart from me, who did it with pen and paper. But that being said, I have also been very open to technology and started using it in my practice.
And obviously with AI and its revolution in the last 3 years, are you or have you been using AI in your legal work prior to your project, or was it fresh technology?
No, I this is where it was the previous answer was kind of yes or no, because this is the yes part. I was definitely one of the earlier adopters of AI in legal practice, compared with a lot of my colleagues and people in the industry. I very early on started using CoCounsel, which is the Thomson Reuters AI embedded, the LLM embedded in the Thomson Reuters Westlaw platform. And I was using that a lot for legal research, which honestly, you learn legal research as a skill, a taught skill at law school, and that is gone. I think it's gone for people who are competent using AI tools to do that.
I think obviously it's not the only industry that will go through a similar thing where there'll be skills, like you say, that are taught right now and have been taught that actually become defunct. They become redundant. I think the experience you have of having that skill, though, helps you get probably the best output. So like if they stop teaching the skill, then how do you get the best quality? It's a totally different divergent conversation, but it's a really interesting one, isn't it? If the AI is capable of a skill, do you bother to teach it anymore? But because you've got the skill in the first place, you know how to use the tool. Does that make sense?
I think so to a degree, but I think it is a new skill that's needed now, and it's the skill of like prompting and checking and verifying.
Yes.
Which is a slightly different skill from the one we're taught. You had these legal directories, and the test and the sort of the skill was you would understand how to use search terms and search words to be able to navigate the directory, but that work isn't done by a human anymore.
I think we found your cat anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Can you hear the cat?
Back with
just for the listeners to understand what on earth this cry for the cat is. Paul's been trying to find his cat this morning because he's supposed to get to the cattery, and he had to phone the cattery.
Let me go and find the cat. We keep recording.
He couldn't locate the cat, and of course now the cat.
I can see.
He wanted to join the podcast. That's what it was.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to go and give him some food because there's no food. So
I'll carry on. So brilliant that is, Matt. So we deep dive into the idea itself. What was the problem you saw that made you think there's a product here? Because obviously you've been talking about the cases, what you've been involved in, and you're now looking at presumably a AI will application. So how on earth did you get into that based on what you've been doing day to day?
Yeah, it's something totally different, really, for me. Don't get me wrong. Clearly, my previous work brought me very close to death and mortality in a way that most people never are. And the biggest lesson I got from that in many ways was, tragically, the unexpected can happen. It can come out of nowhere, and it's better to be prepared for that. But what I'm doing now is something totally different. And it was born from our personal experience of how complicated and difficult it was to get a will. But to your question, the problem as I see it is not enough people have wills. And it's something like around 40% of the UK adult population have a will. So that means 60% don't. And of our target demographic, it's even higher. That's problem number one. Problem number two, as a result of that, this is millions of families who are left unprotected. And that's not a good thing. And problem number three, which is related to all of it, is that I think the market is the problem. What's on offer in the market is making it too hard for people to get a good will quickly and easily. And there needs to be a better solution, which is what which was what I'm building. And there's also a kind of a structural inequality to it, which has exercised us. We are a relatively young, full-time working married couple with a toddler. We don't have time to, during the weekday, actually take a day off to go to a solicitor to get a will done, or have a 2-hour phone conversation on a weekday evening to get our will sorted. And solicitors are closed on the weekends. So in many ways, lots of the kind of younger generations are locked out of this market just by virtue of how it's structured. And those are the problems we're trying to tackle.
And you mentioned a few stats there. So how big is this opportunity? I mean, have you got any more stats, or we're talking about a sector that has barely changed in decades, which is what I'm getting a feel for what you're saying?
I like saying it's barely changed for decades because in many ways it's barely changed for centuries. The governing piece of legislation for wills is the Wills Act 1837. So it's coming up to 200 years old now. Now, don't get me wrong, some changes in the pipeline. There was a Law Commission report last year which is proposing big changes, including electronic wills, digital wills to come. But the market is old-fashioned, ripe for disruption, and we think the opportunity is big. Our target demographic of kind of 25 to 45-year-olds who are hitting key life milestones, it's something like 17, 18 million people. And 70% of those don't have wills, which is a potential market of 12 million people. And most of those people know they need a will. It's the sort of thing that is at the back of your mind and you discuss from time to time. Oh, we need to get that sorted. We need to get
it's like a someday.
A what?
Someday. It's like a someday. I'll do it someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that the case? I mean, I had, just going off topic, I had a conversation last night. Someone contacted me, Matt, and Greg Powthorpe from our networking group. And I couldn't believe this story, but he was basically saying, do you know someone who can basically help with a will? Because he's non-biological grandparents, he calls them, in Coleshill in Birmingham. They've signed up to this will from the next door neighbour. They basically handed everything over to the next door neighbour. He's found out about it. It's obviously a complete fraudulent con.
Oh, no.
And he was like, they're not very well. Have you got someone ASAP? So literally, that's how great networking is, isn't it? So I literally contacted, because I didn't think it was for you at this point, but I gave Greg the opportunity to kind of go and speak to them. But as you rightly said, it's people often leave it to not just wills, is it? It's other kind of things like we should be thinking about, in terms of cover for for work issues and things like that, shouldn't we? But the fact is, we always leave it too late, don't we?
If it falls in the broader kind of life admin package,
yes.
and the other parts of that package are moving into the 21st century. We're seeing the rise of neobanks. You can now very quickly, you can get a Monzo, you can get a Revolut. It's digital first, it's mobile first, mobile friendly, it's modern, convenient, easy. Starting to see similar things with mortgages and insurance, but it feels like wills are like the final frontier. It's still stuck in a different century, but it means it's a big opportunity. But yeah, and like you say, an important one.
Yeah.
What I'm passionate about is the public good. element of this too, because
I'm gonna position myself as a listener here. So we were having dinner last night, and I was talking to my son about it. I said, we've got this guy called Matt coming on. He does, all I said was wills and AI. And then my son said, well, what's a will? Right.
Yeah.
And then I did the most like rubbish explanation. And I said, I'll stop you there. What I'll do is I'll ask Matt tomorrow, because I think there's a lot of people who fall into the trap of, they've heard the term, they know it's something they should do, but they actually don't even know what it actually does. So there is probably the reason why they don't act. Do you see what I mean? It's like you said, it's like something that everyone, I know I need a will. But like you said, if there's a shocking statistic that people don't have it, there's like a knowledge gap there. So I was just thinking, regressing a little bit, thinking of like the most basic question is, what in 1 minute, why should somebody have a will? What does it do? What actually is it?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you've asked that, and it's a perfectly valid question. Lots of people sort of obviously have a general sense of what a will is, and also have a general sense that it's important. But there's a attitude we're trying to overcome, which is that it's something for later, it's something for older people, it's something for people with lots of money, and that is all completely wrong. A will is absolutely 100% for everyone, and in many ways, actually, younger people need it more. Let me explain why. So a will do a number of key things, but the overarching thing it does is set down your wishes so that if the worst happened and your family and your loved ones are thrown into that crisis, there's not another thing that they have to deal with, which is working out what you would have wanted, because it's all structured and written down. That's kind of the most important overarching point. But then practically, what does it do? One, you get to name the people who manage the process. They're called executors. So you get to say, my spouse, my parents, or my sibling, you're going to be my executors who manage the process afterwards. Tick that. Second thing, which is really important, if you're a parent with children under 18, you can name the guardians for your children. So, godparents aren't a thing in law, but if you have kids, you can say in your will, I want to name, again, my parents or my siblings to look after and raise my children. I trust them to do that if I'm gone. And then the next thing it does is the thing most people are aware of, who gets your stuff. And that doesn't have to be lots of things. It could just be some savings that you've got in an ISA, or the money you have in your current account, property, whatever. But it allows you to say, and also I want to say who is going to get all my things afterwards. Obviously, that's an important one too, because no matter how small it is, it prevents, as far as possible, fighting, argument, uncertainty, if the worst happened. And then as well as that, you can do some more personal things. You can leave specific gifts to people if you've got something sentimental, like, grandma, often it's jewelry, your grandma's engagement ring or family jewelry or World War II stuff or whatever. I want to leave that to someone special. You can also set out your funeral wishes. So if you want to be buried or cremated, if you want an eco burial, if you want a certain song to be played. And those are the key things. And they are big decisions in some way, but they are also ones that can, they can be made. And it's a big relief to just do that and get it ticked off the list and get the peace of mind that it's done. I don't know. Does that help in giving?
It does massively, yeah. And I was thinking about, as you were talking, like we were the classics. So me and my wife, you talked about networking earlier, Sean. We won a free will from one of the solicitors in a chapter I was in. So we went and did that, but we did what you said, which was we went, we had to find time in the working day to go and do the meeting and turn up and all this. So there was a lot of inconvenience. But our kids were probably, I don't know, let's just say 2 and 4 at the time. I know in my will, they were going to somebody who I used to room with at university, because he was the only person I knew who had kids. I don't know I think we asked his permission, but it's like the other thing that the complexity or the decades old or centuries old system does is people don't then update their will.
Yep.
So that's what we've done. Our will has got to be 20 years old. I mean, I don't know if it exists as a piece of paper, like you talk about hard copies. Is it in a solicitor's in like a vault? I don't know how the whole thing works.
But that's exactly my question as well, because that's a brilliant one. Because years ago you used to store the hard copy, and then typically, Matt, you wouldn't even realise who you've actually given half your possessions to, and then probably not even in your life anymore.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly it.
So that's so part of that question, because I want to sort of speak about that in what you've developed as well. But let's get into the build now, because you chose the AI tool Lovable as your development tool. So with someone with no experience of technology, as you said, you've
been a bit harsh on yourself.
No, I'm being. Let me rephrase that. Someone with no coding experience.
Yeah.
You know, we all know there's a lot of AI tools out there. There's Lovable, there's Mind Studio, there's Replit. Why that platform specifically?
Yeah. So I started last summer. We came up with the idea, and I started building what I will call the legal architecture. I started creating a series of documents which do the legal function. But then I needed to go and build it. And I was aware of no-code platforms, and at first I went to Base 44. And at the I don't know if this has changed now, but at the time, which was only last summer, Base 44 didn't allow you to upload Excel spreadsheets. So that basically was a non-starter for me. And then I went away and focused more on the business plan and other things, and I was busy with work. Then my plan was, okay, I'm writing the business plan. I want to go to venture capitalists for VC funding, and part of that is a pretty large budget, to be honest, for the build, to go to a studio and for them to do the build and pay for it. But then I got in touch with a friend from school who's the a CEO of a tech startup in London. And I got in touch with him just for sort of a general advice. And he said, right, go and build it. He said, Lovable's the one, go to Lovable and let's talk in a week once you've built it. I was like, okay, all right, well, I'll try. And that's how I came to Lovable. We'll probably talk about more about that in a second. Yeah.
So, but you are completely afresh, and you.
Oh yeah, no coding experience, can't read code, and haven't looked at the code at all myself in this whole experience. Now we'll come on to, obviously I've now brought on a CTO who's technical, but I can't read code and I don't want to read code, but have built an app. Yeah.
Because Paul and I have had we've talked a lot about what we call a PRD, which again, just to reiterate, it's a product requirements document. Was it a case of you have created what we would call a PRD and then passed it to Lovable, or was it more a case of iterating prompt by prompt?
I'd never heard of a PRD.
Okay.
I don't know what a PRD looks like, but
but call it a brief. Did you go into Lovable with like a clear brief written out what you wanted it to deliver? Yeah. And then did you load that brief with your spreadsheets into Lovable? So you gave it a plan.
Yeah.
Some people they do. Yeah. So the alternative, just for people's sake, is when you go to these tools, it literally makes it look like you just need to put one line in. You know, like create me an app that does wills. And then people start there, and then they just spaghetti code. They start to build it layer on layer. Whereas what we've experienced is the people who have the most success, and your validation of this, you talk about funding, is they go into these tools with an absolute clear plan, call it a spec, call it a brief, call it PRD, but it's a well thought out plan of like, this is the functionality that I need. And then effectively AI picks it up and does the build. I know that's massively oversimplified, but it's very different from you making it up on the spot, isn't it? And going, oh, not totally. Like that. I meant this after the event.
Totally.
Because Matt, as you probably know, behind the scenes, you've got a database being constructed. So a plan is far better than someone prompts where, as Paul said, spaghetti code, but imagine all the different table structures that's going on behind the scenes in the database. So you mentioned about obviously not really understanding or not even really looking into the code, but where did it get hard, and what were the biggest walls you hit in the early stages of building the application?
Yeah. Okay. So I did go with a plan then, and the idea of sort of going to Lovable and saying and starting with the first entry in the chat being, I want to write a will writing platform it's definitely not how I would have approached it. Even not knowing the importance of a PRD, etc. I had a complete package of documents.
Perfect.
I created. But that being said, even with that, V1 was just, I mean, so basic and rudimentary, and that was last December, and the version we have now, which is a clean, working, stable, safe, secure MVP, is so different from what I built initially last December. And there were many iterations with just me running the process, and now there've been many iterations with Glenn, the CTO, with his coding experience, being involved in the process.
And have you still got the same, because this is an interesting point, have you still got the same like Lovable project as you had in December, and you've iterated that? You haven't started again and just done a new one? Okay, so you're iterating on version, but fundamentally your view of all of it, I assume, is again another word that we're familiar with, but that you might not be familiar with, which is this MVP, this minimum viable product. You're just trying to create your initial version, like you say, and the only way you can really do it is you get version 0, you get iteration 0. Then you can look back now and go, oh my days, look how far we've come. And if you've mentioned December, we're talking 7 months of development.
That's right.
And it's not constant development as well, probably. I don't know. I mean, it'd be an interesting thing to segue into, but it's a really I think the point of these conversations is you're a real life example of somebody who took an idea, you took it to planning, then the build wasn't done by a human, the build was done by AI. It created your outcome, which was your minimum viable product. And then from there, you're in a test iteration loop, aren't you? You're like, you can put it in front of investors, you can put it in front of stakeholders, you can put it in front of anybody and say, this is what I'm building. There's a massive fear I've found of people who have an idea and they have a plan, but they're reluctant to show it to anyone until it's like, at the gold master, until it's, I was on with somebody last night, and he's built this thing, and I was like, but the minute you launch it, have you got a starving crowd ready to buy it? And he's like, no. And I'm like, how are you going to generate a starving crowd if you don't, or how do you find a buyer if you wait until it's
crowd? This is Hormozy, isn't it?
It is.
Straight from Hormozy.
Yeah, exactly. So, your Grand Slam offer and all that.
Yeah,
so,
I've read it too.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's like the field of dreams, isn't it? Build it and they will come. There's so many people who build something and they hold it so close for fear of like somebody will steal it, somebody will copy it. AI will steal it. If I tell it my plans, it's going to take my code and give it to everyone else. The reality is with the MVP psychology is exactly what you've been doing, which is, no, it's just an experiment of like, I'm building something to see what it will produce, and then I'm iterating it, and then my big assumption is you've shown it to people on the way. The reason you've been able to get CTO on board is because you've shown him both a vision, but also this is what I have.
Well,
other people who don't do that step have nothing to show people. It's a much harder sell to an investor if you go, this is what I'm planning to do, but I've done nothing to this stage.
Yeah, and we have been in an alpha phase where we've been rolling it out to friends and family and our wider network, and aggressively getting feedback and iterating, and that has been a long and hard process, to be honest. And this is why I think there's a duality to it, in that on the one hand the platform lets you create something very rudimentary quickly and easily, but taking that almost immediately, to be honest, but getting from that version to what I would call it maybe even like an MVP plus. Really good, clean, stable, working, safe, secure version, but that is at the very end of the prototyping journey and about to move to scale, which is where we are now. That wasn't easy or fast. It was, as you say, 7 months, real customers, real feedback, lots of challenges and bug squashing and iteration, and it's only through that.
I was just going to say, just before we go back to the scripts, because I love the way we just go off. But how do you know? Because we're talking about wills, and you were talking about it's all about jewelry. It's all about your assets, maybe what money you. surely there's not just one will that fits all.
No. No. And
So if you're building this AI tool, and let's say you perform it against me and Paul, but then you perform it against someone that's a multimillionaire or billionaire like Elon Musk, it's got to be different, surely.
Yeah.
So how do you equate for that?
Yeah, what it creates is simple wills. They're called simple wills,
okay.
but that doesn't mean it's a template or one size fits all at all. A simple will is what is appropriate for like 99% of the population. Okay, it wouldn't be suitable for Elon Musk, but for the vast majority,
Gen Z, 18-year-olds, you are sort of.
Well, it's that market.
Much more, yeah.
It's the market you've talked about, though, isn't it? It's like if you look at, because everything you're doing with an MVP is to test that the market exists, so and that people pay a price that you set it at. Well, can you generate demand, right? So you've already established the process is centuries old. You've already established that there's a certain age range, and only I think you said like a tiny percentage have a will. So if you remove the barriers to entry, you can also say in your total addressable market, what percentage of that needs simple wills?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you're going, is you're very much like, and I think that's, so do you know things like your TAM and stuff like that? Do you know what the total addressable market is for this solution and stuff?
Almost the entire adult population.
But as a figure.
Oh,
you don't have to do it now.
I think you said 17 million at the start, but I presume
it's more like 20.
Yeah,
it's more like 20 to 30 million is the adult population that we're looking at.
But then what I'm on about is you subsent it down and just like segment it and go, right, okay, how many of those have already got a will? Get rid of those, potentially get rid of them. Yeah. Then how many of them are simple wills? And then you end up with like, kind of like it's not your total addressable, but it becomes then a second, I think it becomes a SAM, which is like your segmented addressable market. And it's like, right, of that, we know there's 1 million adults out there in the UK alone that are relevant to our product and offering, and then our goal is to gain a certain amount of market capture, like percentage, and then you can start to run your financials and stuff, and those are the stories that the investors will want.
That's what we've done. We've done that, and I don't know if we would characterize it as the TAM, but the target demographic is those core target demographic is those 12 million people between the ages of 25 and 45 who don't have wills. And if we could and it's something like 600,000 to 1 million, probably more towards 600,000. There aren't clear stats and it fluctuates, but that's about how many people make a will every year. And that's between sort of 50,000 and 100,000 each month. And if we could capture even 1% of that monthly market, that's very significant volume for our financial projections. Can I answer Sean's question on the I don't feel I answered the question on how it treats different people differently.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
I know it's slightly off script, but because I haven't talked about this and it's important. One of the things we hated about the existing market is forms. Whether you go to a solicitor or whether you use the online version, you get sent a form, and the solicitor will send you like an 8-page Word document that's a pretty crappy table, and you have to start the process of filling it out. And everyone hates that, and we hated it. We hate it when we have to do things like our life insurance or mortgage or whatever. And the online equivalent currently is the digital version of that, which is clicking through tens and tens and tens or hundreds of pages. We've built something completely different, using what I think should be the modern standard, a sophisticated AI-guided chat flow. So you don't have to fill out a form. You have a really natural, organic, intuitive conversation with the avatar Nova, named after our daughter. And the feedback on that has been exceptional. Everyone has said, wow, that was so easy. It didn't feel like filling a form. We've got kind of quick...
So it's like an interview.
It's an interview. Yeah. And the idea is...
Natural language.
And
I like it.
And it replicates a conversation you would have with a solicitor or will writer.
Yeah.
But that data gathering exercise changes what will is built. Behind the scenes, a will is being built. And I don't want to go too much into the detail of how that's done for obvious reasons, but
that's your IP.
Yeah, but it absolutely will not be the same will for every person, because it is determined by the data and the specific circumstances of the individual. And the will is instantly available afterwards, which is totally different from what's on the market currently, where you have to...
I think we had 2 appointments. I think we had to go one and do an interview, and then we had to go back in when it was drafted and sign the drafts and stuff. And it's like you say, the process, when it is a simple will, and that's probably the majority, it's only 1% of like true billionaires or whatever. It's really fascinating, because it's connecting the dots in my own head and thinking about how you've spotted, through your own expertise, an industry that's got some real pain, and then you're bringing it to a mass market. But the difference is, and this is where I think people struggle with vibe coding, is what you'll have learned throughout this whole process is like the complete software development lifecycle process. But also, you'll have learned about things like we're talking about, like the lean startup and MVP. So it's like there's a whole other thing about, sales, marketing, investment, all this thing. So the life of a startup. And the way to look at it is Lovable is just the AI build bit. And people forget about everything else. Like they just focus on, I'm now sat in front of Replit, so now I don't need X and I can build Y. But what you've identified is you've taken it to a point. Now I need a CTO. I need a team around me. Now I need investment. And it's that level of thinking that means that you've launched, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people sit on an idea, scared that actually if you're ever showing it to anyone, and they probably don't even have the conviction to say, I want to get some feedback. And what you've done is you took it to market. You've aggressively, like you said, embraced feedback. That is how you build an MVP that addresses the right market with the right solution. And it's like, I think it's a really good grounding for everybody listening, because we've talked a lot about these tools, and I think it's that understanding that there's a much wider ecosystem. And this is just a tool that plugs in at one point. It doesn't help you with a business plan. It doesn't help you with investment. It helps you with investment from a show and tell and a smoke and mirrors MVP, but it's a really good grounding is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and Matt and I met at Sunrise Networking, and I was explaining to him, Paul, about how common we are these audits that we're now sort of going through with clients that obviously have done these applications in Lovable and Replit. Now, can we expand on this a bit further, Matt? Because when was the pinnacle moment when you went, I actually do need someone with experience, so a software developer? Because you mentioned Glenn. When did Glenn, the CTO, come into the picture for you?
This is all because of my wife, Gabby. She is, unlike me, she is much more technical. She works in software and did not as a coder, but as a professional services. And she did an electrical engineering degree. So she was saying, security. We need to make sure security is nailed. We need to make sure this is personal data you're taking. We need to make sure this is nailed down. And I was like, yeah, I agree. So that's why we reached out to Glenn initially, because I knew he's my best friend from school's best friend from uni. And I reached out to him and said, look, I want to steer on this. We need to build the technical side. We need to build the security side. And he loved the vision, loved the idea. It's come at the right time in his life. And so he wanted in. So Gabby saw it all along, but for me, I would say I had a blind spot there, and that I have only realized the importance of that since Glenn came on board, because he has improved it so much, fixed so much, tightened up security, got it to the position, I've got it to the point where it's legally stable and correct. He's got it to the point where it's security-wise, it's stable and correct. And we need both.
Yeah. I think this is the point about the AI journey as well for most people, is if we take it back and talk about, say, 3 years ago or 4 years ago, pre-mass AI, right? You would have needed tens of thousands of pounds, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. You would needed a lot of human beings across the whole picture to get to where you are. It sounds like between three of you, your wife, yourself, and Glenn, and AI, not just Lovable, but you're probably using AI to do all the other elements as 100%. Well. you've able to, and this is why people are saying that the first billionaire will be a solopreneur, you know, like, sorry, a solopreneur billionaire will be kind of created in the next 3 years with just literally a phone and a laptop. It's obviously dismissing, but I think what we're seeing is the trend is you can do a hell of a lot more with less people. If you get the right people with the right skill set, and then everybody gets like a 10x productivity boost by using their lived experience with AI, you're capable of delivering now what would have took a team easily, a team of 10, to execute that vision. And it probably would have took 2 years to get to where you are today. You've done it in 7 months. Yeah. So those are like the real world results. I mean, that's me totally, a bit of hyperbole, but totally like thinking back to, if you didn't use AI, what would you have had to done? You would have been pre-built. You would have been looking for funds to do your MVP.
Yeah. And there's something I should have said, which you'll probably find interesting too, from the developer's perspective. The whole time I was using Lovable, so I put in my architecture, my package, and got the first version. And then I started the process of iterating, and I went through that process of iterating before I went to real users. I was using test scenarios, and I was making loads of changes myself. But the whole time I was using first ChatGPT to help me, and then Claude. And there was a point early on where we got in touch with Gabby's cousin, who's a developer in America, who helped get me started and clean some things up. But as a result of that, Glenn has then come in and looked at the code and said, this is decent, right? This is much, much better than a lot of the horror stories I've heard of with no-code apps. And I suspect that is because from the start, I did do a PDM,
a PRD.
Essentially. Yeah, I did do a PRD, but with a different name. And then my prompting was good. Glenn has gone back and looked at the prompting and said, but the reason the prompting was good is because I was almost copy and pasting between Claude.
But that's how my experience, and the thing I encourage is, if somebody's going to vibe code, it is literally like have 2 screens or 2 windows and have like a separate LLM. Like typically now people are using Claude. So you'd have Claude helping you to work out what to then prompt with Lovable. And effectively you can kind of trade off, if you've got a plan on Claude, you can kind of max up to your credits there to then only pay the expensive kind of Lovable build when it actually needs to execute. The alternative is you're just fucking single shot in, go and change this, not like that, do this, and it's all inside Lovable, and it's burning through way more tokens and credits than it is to do the thinking outside. But you do, again, that's another tip for the listener is, I would always say, don't exist in one tool. Don't just be in Replit. Don't just be in Lovable. Have your almost like your senior developer sat on your shoulder is your Claude LLM or your chat, whatever you want to use. And that's your kind of CTO until you have a real human CTO. And then the reality is, Glenn, I assume, will be just doing that. They'll have their senior developer sat on their shoulder as they go through, and they're just, so everybody kind of gets a second kind of, pair programming, really, going, I'm planning to do this, we're planning, how should we execute, what are the risks, all this sort of stuff. So I think it's the beauty of this conversation, Matt, genuinely is it's giving, I believe, people a real insight into how you've actually got to where you are, which leads to the question, where are you going?
Well, I think we're going to park it just there, because as always we've run out of time. So Matthew, because we're talking about Glenn as the third person, which is shame he's not here, why not let's bring you both back, because we've only really gone through half of what we need to discuss today, so that's okay with you. We do this all the time, Matt. We always talk too much, Paul and I do, but look, this is fantastic. What you built, what you're talking about is really, really key for all our listeners. So would you be happy to do that? Would you be happy to come back?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to.
I'd laugh if you said no.
Yeah, this
not on record.
Not after the cat issues.
Yeah. I think we've teed it up good though there for a part 2, because it's literally like we've dangled the carrot of, okay, what's really interesting is you've got it to here, we've covered that journey. So if we focus for part 2 on the future, and then also it would be really interesting to include your perception of the future of your industry as well.
Yeah.
So where you see, and that's where it's been really interesting. When we talk to different people for part 2, we've kind of covered where we are today. And then where do you see both the product and what you're trying to do? I mean, I don't know. Are you trying to IPO this? We can cover all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And then effectively the vision for the business, but also what you see happening to recruitment in law and stuff like this.
And also, I was thinking as well, once you've done the simple will now, obviously, typically, we're all used to sort of printing something off. You mentioned it yourself. I like paper. Well, I used to. And you then sort of file it. And then, of course, then you can't find it. Or if unfortunately someone did pass away, how do you find that will? But also updating wills as well. I think that's a great conversation to have as well.
Yeah.
That your application, presumably you can go back in, something changes in your life and you can go and update it. So,
quickly,
so all this stuff I think would be really good. Yeah, brilliant. So
I think, go on. I was going to say,
no, you
do you
go.
want to go? I was going to say, if we're going to wrap up there and we'll do part 2 and we'll get you on for that. So is there anything our listeners can do to help with NovaWIL? You know, how can they help you or how can they get in touch?
Yeah, that's great. We haven't really talked about this, but we are now live and we have moved into soft beta, soft launch. The hard launch will come. So anyone who's listening to this and hasn't got their will sorted yet and thinks that sounds great can go on the website and try it now. And at this stage, we're checking everything ourselves manually, very carefully, and welcoming new users. So it's www.novawil.co.uk. And I've also started doing educational videos on
Nice.
and wills. So
Great.
That's my social media handle, my Instagram handle at Matthew Turner Barrister, and at NovaWIL UK. Which
and if someone's already got a will,
yeah,
can they still go on and help you with like
yeah.
as in they can create another will just to see how the process works and to get an understanding of everything you've said? It's not like if you've got a will somewhere else you can't do it.
No, anyone can come on and create an account and have a go at the product and just see what it's like.
Yeah.
And if your will is out of date, then you make a new one. And every time you make a new will, the first clause of the will says, I revoke my previous will. So if they finish and make a new will that's now up to date and fit for purpose, then the old will is revoked automatically.
Brilliant. Amazing.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thanks ever so much, Matthew. It's been brilliant. That's it for episode 29. It was absolutely fantastic, as we just said. So thanks for listening. Take care, and we'll catch you next time with Matthew Turner and Glenn on CTRL-ALT-DEV.